going on, guys? Jesse here. So this is the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, and I've been using it for roughly the past month. And over my period of usage, I've basically come to the conclusion that this is essentially the ultimate price is no object, no compromises Android experience, at least for right now. And I guess that shouldn't be too much of a surprise taking into account what Samsung has been producing for these past couple of years. And I think if that's something that you're looking for, this is an easy recommendation to make. They've made some big upgrades this year that even might make it a compelling choice for someone who has something from the S21 series. Of course, this isn't the perfect phone though, and I'll talk about some of the issues that I had with it later, but for now, let's get started by talking about the design and build. So this year, we've got a completely different design from last year, but one that's definitely not new, strictly speaking. So if you've been following what Samsung has been up to for the past couple of years, you'll know that they just straight up copy and pasted the overall shape and design from the Note series. And really, this essentially is just a new Note device, just without the Note name. And I know it sounds like I'm complaining about it, but I'm really not, because a lot of people, myself included, were very disappointed when there wasn't a new Note last year. But this year, the Note is back in spirit with all the things that us Note fans loved about it: the big screen with the squared off corners, flat top and bottom, and of course, the S Pen. And if you couldn't tell already, I'm a huge fan of this design. I just think it looks way more industrial, and it's actually the main reason that I've always preferred the Note series over the S series, as silly as that sounds. It's still very comfortable to hold as well thanks to these nice curves and this fantastic frosted glass that feels unbelievably soft in the hands. Like, I'm well aware that Samsung isn't the only company to be doing frosted glass on the back of their phones, but I truly think that they're just doing it the best right now. The sides of the front screen are a bit curved to match the back though, which I think does make the front of the device look really cool in my opinion, and looks great in marketing photos, but I have run into some issues with accidental touches. It doesn't seem to be too bad, and if you use this with a case like most people do, this is going to be a non-issue for you. And of course, we're also rocking all the most premium materials as well, with Gorilla Glass Victus on the front and back, and what is apparently Samsung's strongest aluminum frame ever, which, good job guys. And IP68 water and dust resistance. The S Pen does now have a matte finish on it, which does feel nice when you're using it, but there's some extra friction when you're putting it in and out that kind of feels like you're scraping the finish off. So far, nothing has actually come off yet, but it just makes me cringe a little bit every time I take it in and out, and I can feel the scraping going on. And I guess only time will tell whether or not the finish will actually show any wear. So I guess make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss my long-term review of this phone. As far as aesthetics go, I've heard a lot of mixed things about this design, particularly with this camera section here. All of the lenses are just kind of hanging out on their own, and honestly, when I first saw this thing online, I was shocked that Samsung could produce something this hideous. But over time, it's actually grown on me, and I quite like it now. So if this is what's holding you back from pulling the trigger on one of these, my advice would be to 1, see it in person, and 2, to just give it some time. Also, I would look into getting the Phantom Black colorway because I think it does a much better job in just hiding some of like the weirdness of the design. Obviously, this is super subjective though, and you're gonna have to make the call on whether or not you like it yourself. So one thing I think everyone will like on this phone though has to be this screen. So first of all, it's huge. At 6.8 inches across, it is about as big as you're gonna get in a phone nowadays, and if you're into that, which I certainly am, you're really going to enjoy this screen. So like last year, it's got a 1440p panel, which I think for a smartphone is honestly as much as you're ever gonna need. I personally still have trouble telling the difference between 1080p and 1440p at this size, and I think I would honestly recommend just scaling it down a little bit for some extra battery life. But it's nice that the option is there if you want that resolution. This is also rocking Samsung's latest LTPO tech, which Samsung claims can go between 120Hz all the way down to just 1Hz to conserve battery life when you're just displaying static images. Now, there is some controversy going on right now about whether or not it actually goes all the way down to just 1Hz, And honestly, I don't really care enough to check just because the principle is there and it doesn't really matter all that much to me. What does matter to me more though is all of the other aspect of the screen, like the colors, contrast, and brightness. All of which this phone does amazingly. Like, I say this every time I look at a new Samsung flagship device, and this one is no different. They've had this category on lock for the past couple of years, and this year is no different. So I guess first, in terms of objective measurements, with a peak brightness of 1750 nits, this is pretty much the brightest phone screen that's out right now, meaning that viewing outdoors even in bright sunlight is no issue. And if you accidentally crank it up when you're in a dark room, it gets like uncomfortably bright. Colors and contrast are also both on point, and looking at photos and watching videos on here is a great experience. The speakers are not the best I've ever heard, but are very good as well, so it's a really great media consumption device overall. The curved edges do kind of make the content at the edges warp a little bit, but it's really not too bad, and honestly, it's never really bothered me. I will say though, if you've used past Samsung devices with a curved screen like this and it's bothered you before, it'll still probably bother you in this phone. But overall, it's hard to find anything wrong with the panel in this device. It really does just look incredible. So for the past couple of years, Samsung has been rocking One UI and all of its iterations since its release, and I think for the most part, it's really nice. It's got an aesthetic to it that I don't like quite as much as stock Android, like what you get on the Pixels, but in my opinion, it's still a very nice place to spend time. And it's more or less the same as previous versions of One UI, like if you've used other Samsung devices in the past and you liked the software experience on those, then you'll probably like it on this as well. If you didn't, then this is probably not going to change your mind either. What is new though is the S Pen and all of the features that come with it. So just like previous Note devices that Samsung has made, the S Pen just comes stored in the silo on the bottom of the phone. So when you're not using it, you don't even notice that it's there, which I think is the right way to do it. Because at least for me personally, I hardly ever use the S Pen. Like, I find myself pretty much only using it for more precision tapping while I'm playing games, and as just a little fidget toy, because that's just a lot of fun. But if you are someone who uses the S Pen a lot, you'll be glad to know that you still get all the features that old S Pens had, like being able to take quick notes just by pulling out the S Pen on the lock screen, and long-range Bluetooth remote that you can use to control the camera. And now, also with this new version, we've got lower latency than ever, down to around 3 milliseconds from about 9 on the previous versions, thanks to AI prediction models. And I mean, those old ones already felt like real time to me, so this is just kind of icing on the cake. And interestingly, this also makes it faster than the Apple Pencil now. The only thing that I wasn't a big fan about this new S Pen though is, like I mentioned earlier, the matte finish. Like, the extra friction just makes it a little tougher to pull in and out, and yes, I know, I'm absolutely nitpicking here, but I just can't help but think that every time I take this in and out of the phone. So because this is an Ultra device, of course we have to have all the latest and greatest hardware in here, like the brand new Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 and a beefy new cooling solution to go along with it, 8 GB of RAM in the base model and 12 gigs in all the others, and up to 1 TB of storage. And honestly, I feel like at this point, I really don't need to say this, but it just flies through anything that you throw at it in regular use. Although if you load up a demanding game like Genshin and you crank up the settings, you can definitely get it to drop some frames, especially if there's a lot going on. And it does get quite warm to the touch if you're doing intense activities for a prolonged period of time. We've also got an improved under-display ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, which works incredibly well, like super fast, and you can also have the redundant face unlock as well, which isn't as secure, but I really like having both options available just in case like your hands are wet or dirty or something like that. Battery life is really great as well. So we've got a huge 5000 mAh cell in here, same as last year, and the actual battery life doesn't seem to be quite as good as the S21 Ultra, but I would still classify this as an all-day battery life that you don't really need to worry about charging in the middle of the day, unless you're doing something especially demanding. And honestly, I find it incredible that they've been able to fit the same size battery as last year while also fitting in the S Pen, which just blows my mind. It does charge a bit faster though than last year at up to 45 watts, but you're gonna need to buy that adapter separately if that's something that you want, which is unfortunate. Okay, and finally, let's talk about cameras. If you've made it here, congrats. If you skipped here, welcome. But as far as hardware goes, the camera system this year is pretty much the exact same as the quad system on the back last year, with the ultra wide, 3x telephoto, and 10x telephoto. And overall, this is a really solid flagship level camera system. It performs pretty well in pretty much any situation that you put it in, and it has that signature Samsung look that they've been doing for the past couple of years, where they're a bit more aggressive than other companies in their processing, in bringing up shadows, sharpening, and that kind of thing. It also tends to white balance a little bit on the cooler side, so if you like that look, then you're getting that here too. Samsung has also made it a point to talk a lot about nightography, which is just photography at night. Not really sure why that needed a new name, but it definitely does collect a lot of light in low light, which is great, but it does make the photos look a little bit less natural in the sense that your night photos aren't really gonna look like they were taken at night anymore. And if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, Samsung also has an Expert RAW app that you can download from the Galaxy Store that you can use to take full control of the cameras. And I think there might be a slight difference in quality, but it's really not much. Video-wise, it's also pretty good. In terms of image quality, I don't think there's a huge difference from last year, but I think stabilization-wise, there's been a really big improvement. It does crop into the image slightly to achieve this effect, but overall, I really like the performance here, and just overall, very solid camera system. So at the end of the day, after testing this phone, we gotta answer the question of whether or not I recommend this phone, right? And I think even though there's always gonna be some nuance to that answer, overall, I think this is a really easy phone to recommend. Like with premium flagship devices like this, of course you're never looking at these things that cost over $1,000 thinking that you're getting the best value, because you can spend less than half of this amount and still get a great phone. But if you're okay with spending this amount on a phone and you're in the market for a premium flagship device, I think this does it better than pretty much everything else out there. Okay, so those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And if you want to know how this stacks up to the iPhone and Pixel, go ahead and check out my comparison. I'll have it linked in the description. Like if you liked it, sub if you loved it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.